So Sergey, can I ask you to share your screen and your presentation, and tell us a little bit about the role of public finance, of public support in food system transformation?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lisette. We started with the discussion of that, and we also saw in the feedback what Brown was showing on who are the important stakeholders, right, for the food systems transformation. And government and the public finance was one of the key stakeholders which can influence the final outcome. Let me give you the couple of examples from the literature, and because we will be sharing the slides with you, there are also links to these studies, which hyperlinks to these studies you can click on. So we've done a work globally, looked on the global agricultural support in 2022, and we said that just shifting at 10% of subsidies which distort markets and production and consumption decisions to innovations which generate productivity growth at lower environmental cost could generate significant economic benefits for farmers, for consumers, and for the planet. In Latin America, there is a study which looked on the agricultural support and found that a shift of 10 percentage points of agricultural budget from private goods to public goods leads to 5% increase in value added per capita. To achieve the same result would require an increase of 25% in total spending. So you can achieve the same result either to increase total budgets by 25% or shifting expenditures between categories from less impactful to more impactful spending. And finally, in the European Union, there are a lot of studies, but the World Bank worked with Commission in 2018 and looked on the impact of different types of the support, and looked at that decoupled farm payments and rural development programs increase agricultural productivity, while subsidies which are linked to production of specific crops actually and livestock products reduce average productivity. So I'm giving you these examples not for the sake of giving you these examples and jump on it immediately, but I just wanted to make a point that all public expenditures are not equal. It really matters, and my experience is the country may spend a little, may spend a lot, but at the end of the day, what determines the impact of public spending, what the government spending money on, whether they're spending on delivery of public goods, something which private sector will never deliver, and whether they address market failures by focusing on creation of markets rather than disturbing of markets. So when we look on the global agricultural support, and I have a data for about 80, 90 countries depending on the year, we see that globally it's not fit for purpose. So that's was actually quite aligned with the Metrometer exercise, which said whether the public expenditure on agricultural support is well positioned for food systems transformation. The answer is not. So when we look on agricultural support, we have two elements. We have market price support, which is paid by consumers. It could be prices above all market level or below market level, and public expenditures. So globally, in the last couple of years, the agricultural support exceeded $800 billion. So it's quite an amount of money. But unfortunately, 60% of that support has been, especially for producers, has been either price distorting or harmful to nature. So you see this red line, and support below that red line is distortionary, does not add in on significant positive impact. And the job is actually to increase the share of the support which is contributing more for food systems transformation. We can see that on average, every dollar of public support spent globally generate additional value of production is only 35 cents. right? So there is a huge scope to improve the quality of agricultural support globally. Definitely, there are differences in each country. Each country is unique. Each region is unique. But if you divide the world into the two groups, high-income countries, which belong to Organization of Economic Development and Cooperation, OECD, and other emerging economies, you would see that in the OECD countries, over time, in the last 40 years, the level of agricultural support more or less stayed the same. It's in the nominal US dollar, so it's about between 250 and 270 billion dollars. On the other hand, in the emerging economies, the total support in the last 20 years increased significantly. And if you look on the right side and look on the farm payments, because the total support is the sum of the market price support, direct farm payments, and the general support services. General support services are research, extension, infrastructure, inspections and controls, etc. So if you look on the share of subsidies which we consider are the most distorting and not contributing to the development, the share of the subsidies in the OECD reducing over time used to be about 75%. Now it's about 50% of total direct farm support. Still significant, but we see the trend and we see the changes over time. On the other hand, if you look on the emerging economies, the share of distortive subsidies is not changing, is even slightly increasing, and it's now 70% of total spending. So that's why in many countries around the world, we're having really conversations with our clients how to improve the existing allocation of funds to achieve better outcomes. Now, in the World Bank, we have a lot of engagements on, and we call it repurposing of agricultural support. It's very difficult to argue and advocate to reduce the total support. I think a lot of our discussions going about how to improve the impact of the funds going to agriculture rather than completely eliminating it. Because agriculture, there are a lot of market failures in public goods which require financing. So we are working on data collection, we're working on the public expenditure reviews, we're providing investments for reforms, and we have and we do the policy dialogues. In the next 3 slides, I will give you a couple of examples what we are trying to do at the country level. So in Africa region, my global team is engaging in a lot of discussions on improving the impact of the fertilizer subsidies. The reason for that if you can see on this figure, many countries spend a significant amount of their direct farm support on subsidies, on especially input subsidies. And the problem is that in many parts of Africa, they have low impact. Despite the growing costs, the impact on the production remain low, adoption of fertilizer remain on average 20 kilogram per hectare, so the impact is not satisfactory. And the reason for that in many places is the design of the fertilizer subsidy programs. And you can see here the key elements of the design. It's usually universal subsidy, using blanket fertilizer recommendations. It's nitrogen fertilizers delivered by the state-owned companies without much input from advisory services and research. Now, what we are really trying and engaging in many countries in Africa now is to improve the design, not eliminate fertilizer subsidies. We really acknowledge the need to increase the use of fertilizers in Africa. Africa probably the only region in the world where World Bank advocates for using more fertilizers. In other regions, we work with the clients to reduce the use of fertilizers, but not in Africa. I think the problem is that the current public programs are not stimulating the higher adoption. So we are working with many clients around the world to promote e-vouchers, to promote better targeting through digital farm registration. We are advocating for the private sector to import, produce, and distribute fertilizers. We are working in many countries to move from blanket fertilizer recommendation to site-specific fertilizer recommendation. And in African context, I think addressing soil acidity and degradation with the different bundles is really, really critical to get an input. Here is the one example, e-vouchers in Zambia. And if some of you from Zambia or from Africa region, you may know that Zambia has been supporting input subsidies for a long time. In the recent years, the annual budget for input subsidies has been close to $400 million. It's typically a couple of bags of fertilizers and seeds to produce maize, and inputs was used to be delivered by the state-owned enterprises. And every year was the same, more or less, result. You get rains, you get good supply response. You don't get rains, the supply response from that significant fertilizer subsidy was quite low. 2024, the country scaled up the e-vouchers. They piloted it before, but they really started to scale up in 2024, in 2025, and for 2026 now, the government will cover 100% of the districts. In 2023, they covered 40% of the districts. And we helped the Ministry of Agriculture to do impact evaluation, the first time impact evaluation of the e-vouchers. And we see significant satisfaction of farmers. And the e-vouchers work as the following. We are providing the same amount of money per beneficiary, but giving farmers choice of inputs. There are more inputs than fertilizers, there are other equipment, there are other seeds. So it helps with the maize production, but it also helps with the crop diversification. So the e-vouchers improved timeliness, improved input quality. It's a private sector who delivers now, it's the agro-dealers who deliver now fertilizers and other inputs. They create more jobs, and everybody would like to continue. 96% of farmers, 100% of agro-dealers want to continue e-voucher. So essentially, we spend the same amount of money, $400 million, as was used before, but we are getting much more result on the ground by giving farmers flexibility, by letting the private sector to do their job, and the government to focus really on the quality control, on extension services, and on making sure that money are in the budget for the agro-dealers to use to release the funds. Second example I would like to give, and we are in a couple of countries, Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, and Bangladesh, we have ongoing projects which are under implementation. And Indonesia and Philippines, we are preparing projects where we are piloting different technical solutions, similar to Zambia, like e-vouchers. We are helping these countries to improve or establish digital farm registry to improve targeting. And it's on targeting, there are a couple of issues. One of the political questions, whom to target, small farms, large farms, medium-sized farms. But once that political decision is made, it's very important to identify, to find those farmers. And digital farm registry play an important role to help identify those farmers and low transaction costs. So it's a lot of work goes into the thinking and design and implementation of that element. Complementary services are extremely important, soil testing, soil smart cards, advisory services. Addressing soil acidity, in Malawi and Tanzania, we are trying different bundles on different soils, organic, non-organic fertilizers, to really see, to inform the national subsidy. And for all of these projects, we will be doing impact evaluations to share lessons within the country to inform the repurposing of the bigger subsidy in the country. But also to inform similar efforts in the countries in Africa region and Asia. The final example I want to give, in 2 more minutes, we are stepping in to give more information to the governments. I strongly believe that while there are many stakeholders important for food systems transformation, public finance is critical. And it's important to get the public officials on board, that they better understand their roles, what they can do, what they cannot do, to really make a difference on the repurposing of agricultural support. We will be launching the so-called impact program on repurposing in Africa in February 2026. We will launch it in Lusaka, Zambia. We will have 6 countries to participate: Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Senegal, Tanzania, and Zambia. We will be targeting representatives of ministries of agriculture and finance to spend time with us and do peer-to-peer learning on selected technical issues. Again, the same topics: e-vouchers, targeting, soil acidity, degradation. I think I work in Africa region for a while, and there is already acceptance that these are the potential instruments, and and there are the problems to solve. But there is still a knowledge gap: what works, what doesn't work, how much it costs. There are, I don't know, probably each country in Africa already piloted e-vouchers, but very few scaled it up to the national level. And so it's really what we're trying to or soil information system, right? Every country now invest in soil information system, digital maps, this and that. But very few countries can tell me that 50% of the farm plots have site-specific fertilizer recommendation. Probably no country in Africa can say it. And the question is, so what the soil information system is for? So we are really trying to take a stock what is happening. The World Bank financing a lot of programs right now along this list of 6 areas. What we are trying to bring our expertise, we are trying to get cross-country learning as much as possible and out of this country's learning to move this agenda forward, which is extremely important. Finally, I'll give you the link to our very recent agricultural support repurposing website. We just launched it a couple of months ago, where you can find a lot of data, a lot of World Bank reports. You can find information about each repurposing projects. We have for each project the project appraisal document, it's called PAD. And you can have access to the toolkits of how we are making the analysis on agricultural support, and also the collection of the empirical studies. We have like probably 17 studies in where we summarize in the PowerPoint presentation for the ease of use. So you can go and click and see how there are empirical studies, how different type of agricultural support determine agricultural outcomes. And we hope that website is useful for you and your work. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Very interesting, Sergey. Very much looking forward also to the project that you're going to do in those 6 countries in Africa, and to see what the results are. Before we go to Bas, a quick question to Marielle. Are there any questions in the chat for clarification?
Yeah, there are only questions for clarification on countries. Why there are some people want to have the program also in countries like Nigeria, Kenya. I didn't see other clarification questions. So maybe Sergiy, you can say a bit about the areas and which countries are you not involved and involved? Will you be heading to Nigeria as well?
Sure. Look, in each country, the World Bank is the largest financier of agricultural development aid. When you add up all lending from all international organizations together, and I mean multilateral development banks, African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, IFAD, Inter-American Development Bank. When you add up all of these together, the World Bank still provide more lending and the grants to the countries on agriculture. And it's not enough, and it's never be enough, right? So point 1, that's why this domestic resource mobilization and the repurposing of existing expenditures is so critically important. Second, in each country, there are 2-3 agricultural projects already. What I have presented is the example of the additional help my global team is currently providing to top up and add to already very complex and extensive engagement. And finally, On the repurposing, we really work on the demand basis in terms of it's not just enough to say, oh, I also want to do it in a country, but we want to see really seriousness of the government to would like to do it and make a difference. Every country would like to attract grants, to study this and that. But for me, the repurposing, I need to see strong commitments to really reform agricultural subsidy, not just on word, but in action. And unfortunately, in those countries, and I can mention Kenya, right now, after the 2022, the Kenya moved to the input subsidy arrangement, which is not creating markets, it's destroying markets. Before 2022, Kenya had the most progressive fertilizer markets and the input subsidy program, which helped input suppliers to deliver the best quality inputs to farmers. After 2022, the arrangement are not the best. And so when the Kenya is moving to the better arrangements on how the price of fertilizers is determined, how the government actions crowd in private investments, the World Bank, I'm sure, will be pretty happy to step in and talk about the repurposing projects. But right now, unfortunately, the situation on the ground does not allow us to talk about reforms. And through my engagements, we are trying to engage with countries who would like really to change the status quo and move to the better arrangements. Over. Back to you, Lisette.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Let's go to Bas to hear about Rabobank and the role of private finance in food system transformation.